Some legends sparkle under the lights, but only a few shine even when the lights go out. Dolly Parton isn't just the queen of country music, she's a living monument to survival. For over 6 decades, she's given us songs that healed hearts, but behind that glitter lies a life carved by pain, loss, and battles no stage could ever hide. From losing her baby brother before she was even 10, to being mocked for her childhood poverty, to nearly losing her life when her dreams of motherhood were shattered, Dolly has carried wounds that fame and fortune could never erase. Her music wasn't just entertainment, it was survival, a lifeline she threw to herself long before the world sang along. And the tragedies didn't stop with childhood. The deaths of her family members, the crushing silence after her mother's passing, and the devastating loss of her husband Carl Dean after nearly 60 years together left her facing a grief no audience could ever see. Even now, at 79, while the world celebrates her as untouchable, Dolly wakes up every morning to a silence more painful than any critic's words. This is the story the spotlight never showed. A story of a woman who rose from nothing, conquered the world, and yet still battles storms in the quiet of her Tennessee home. Don't look away, because what Dolly Parton has survived will change the way you hear every song she's ever sung. Dolly Parton was born on January 19, 1946, in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. Her first home wasn't a mansion or even a modest house. It was a one-room cabin with no electricity, no running water, and no guarantees. Her parents were so poor, they paid the doctor who delivered her with a sack of cornmeal. For Dolly, survival wasn't just a word. It was the backdrop of her entire childhood. Winters in the mountains could cut like knives. She and her 11 siblings would huddle under one thin blanket, clinging to each other just to stay warm. Summers meant bathing in the river, winters meant icy pans of water that burned her skin. And when her mother stitched together a patchwork coat of scraps, Dolly wore it proudly, until classmates mocked her for looking like she was dressed in rags. What they didn't see was that coat carried dignity, love, and survival in every stitch. That memory stayed with her forever. Years later, she turned the humiliation into one of her most powerful songs, Coat of Many Colors. A story of how, even in poverty, love could shine brighter than wealth. But behind that melody was a child who learned very early that the world could be cruel, and that sometimes the only way to fight back was with music. By the time Dolly was 7, she was already writing songs. Long before she could spell, she scribbled lyrics on scraps of paper, turning hunger into harmony and grief into something she could hold. Her voice echoed through the hollers of Tennessee, not just as a child's song, but as a weapon against silence, loneliness, and despair. Her family saw the gift immediately. By age 10, she was already performing on local radio and TV, often traveling with her Uncle Bill Owens to tiny stations with little more than sandwiches and hope in their pockets. They slept on couches, in cars, wherever they could, just so Dolly's voice could be heard. She later said those years were rich in dreams, but poor in everything else. That fire never dimmed. By the time she graduated high school, she knew there was only one place she belonged: Nashville. With a cardboard suitcase, $20 in her pocket, and nothing to fall back on, Dolly boarded a Greyhound bus and promised herself she would not return home empty-handed. She wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing survival. Nashville didn't welcome her with open arms. Her first recording contract with Monument Records in 1965 was supposed to be her big break, but instead, it became a cage. Executives claimed her voice wasn't right for country music and pushed her into bubblegum pop songs. Dolly sang the words, but her heart wasn't in them. She later admitted those sessions felt like wearing someone else's skin. The singles flopped, but Dolly refused to break. At night, she wrote songs in the dim light of hotel rooms and by candle when the electricity was cut. Her breakthrough came not with her own voice, but with her pen, when her song Put It Off Until Tomorrow became a hit for Bill Phillips in 1966. Suddenly, people in Nashville started asking, "Who is Dolly Parton?" In 1967, she released Hello, I'm Dolly, a title that was less an introduction and more a warning. Her songs weren't bubblegum, they were raw, true, and unapologetic, but Nashville still tried to box her in. She was labeled someone's girl singer, dismissed as a novelty. What they didn't realize was behind the sequins was steel, and behind the smile was a woman who had survived too much to ever let anyone else write her story. By the early 1970s, Dolly's career was gaining traction. but she was still seen as Porter Wagoner's duet partner rather than a star in her own right. That changed in 1973 when she unleashed Jolene, a haunting plea so raw and hypnotic that it silenced critics who had underestimated her. The following year, she made the heartbreaking decision to leave Wagner's show, but instead of walking away in bitterness, she wrote, "I Will Always Love You," a farewell so tender that it became one of the greatest ballads ever written. That song wasn't just a goodbye. It was proof that Dolly could stand on her own. In the years that followed, she pushed past industry gatekeepers who insisted women couldn't be headliners. By 1977, she shattered expectations with Here You Come Again, her first major crossover hit, topping both country and pop charts. Critics accused her of betraying country music, but she fired back, "I wasn't leaving country, I was taking it with me." Then came 1980, and with it, a cultural explosion. Starring alongside Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin in 9 to 5, Dolly not only conquered Hollywood, but also wrote the film's theme song Overnight. That track stormed to #1 across country, pop, and adult contemporary charts simultaneously, making history. Dolly Parton was no longer just a country star, she was an international icon. But behind the laughter and rhinestones, Dolly carried heartbreak that few ever saw. For years, she dreamed of being a mother, imagining children running through her home, lullabies sung not to audiences, but to her own babies. In 1966, when she married Carl Dean, she thought that dream was within reach. But by 1982, a private health crisis revealed she suffered from endometriosis, leading to surgery that ended her chance of ever having children. The loss devastated her. Dolly later admitted that she sank into such despair, she once wished she had the nerve to end it all. In her darkest moment, it was her little dog, Popeye, who saved her, his quiet presence pulling her back from a decision she could never undo. That moment became a turning point. She realized she couldn't give life to her own children, but she could pour her love into millions of others. Through her imagination library, she began donating books to children around the world. Today, that program has given away more than 200 million books. Dolly often said maybe this was her purpose, that God wanted her to be a mother to the world. Still, the ache of never hearing the word mama directed at her never truly left. It lingered quietly, even in her brightest moments. If losing the dream of motherhood wasn't enough, Dolly's later life was marked by family heartbreak that cut even deeper. In 2003, when her beloved mother, Avie Lee, passed away, Dolly admitted it felt like a light went out in her life. For months, she couldn't bring herself to sing Coat of Many Colors, the song tied so closely to her mother's love. Every time the opening chords rang out, her throat would close. Then, in 2018, tragedy struck again. Her younger brother, Floyd, who had been her closest creative partner, died at just 61. Together, they had written countless songs, including the hit Rockin' Years. For Dolly, his death wasn't just the loss of a brother, it was like losing a part of her own rhythm. Friends recalled how she moved through those months with a silence around her, as though a vital piece of her music had gone missing. The losses didn't end there. Dolly poured money and effort into helping her niece Tever through personal battles, even paying $25,000 for rehab in a desperate attempt to save her. But at only 36, Tever passed away, leaving Dolly shattered. For a woman who had always turned pain into melody, these wounds were too raw, too heavy for even her songs to carry. They were the kinds of heartbreak that linger forever in silence, haunting even the brightest smile. Through every storm, there was one person who grounded Dolly, her husband, Carl Dean. Unlike the flashing lights of Hollywood or the roaring crowds of stadiums, Carl was steady, private, and deeply loyal. He never cared about the fame or the fortune. To him, Dolly wasn't an icon in rhinestones, she was simply his wife, the woman he held close in the quiet of their Nashville home. For nearly 60 years, Carl was her anchor, her confidant, and her greatest protector. While the world demanded more of Dolly, Carl gave her a place where she didn't have to perform. Their love survived the chaos of tours, films, and endless headlines because it was built on simplicity and trust. But in 2025, at the age of 82, Carl passed away quietly at home. The loss devastated Dolly in ways she had never experienced before. Friends said she didn't just lose her husband, she lost the only person who knew her before the world claimed her. The funeral was private, filled with wildflowers from their land and photographs of their life together. Dolly herself sang a love song she had written for him decades earlier, her voice trembling as if her heart might break in front of everyone. For the first time, the world saw the woman behind the legend, grieving not as a superstar, but as a widow who had lost her soulmate. After Carl's death, Dolly's mansion in Brentwood, Tennessee became a quieter place. The halls still glitter with awards, and her businesses like Dollywood still thrive, but the loudest sound is silence. Every morning, she still sets 2 cups of coffee on the table out of habit, only to face the empty chair across from her. The weight of absence lingers in every room. Yet, even in grief, Dolly hasn't stopped giving. Her imagination library continues to deliver books to children worldwide, while Dollywood sustains thousands of jobs in her hometown. She has carefully prepared her estate, worth over $650 million, to support literacy, healthcare, music education, and the Appalachian culture that raised her. Dolly knows she has no biological children, but she often says her true children are the millions of lives she's touched through kindness. Her catalog of more than 3,000 songs, her philanthropy, and her spirit of generosity form a legacy few can match. To Dolly, success was never just about standing in the spotlight, it was about lifting others into it. Even now, in her late 70s, her influence only grows deeper. She has become more than an artist. She has become a symbol of resilience, compassion, and hope. Dolly Parton's story isn't just one of fame or fortune, it's a story of survival. From a one-room cabin in the Smoky Mountains to the grandest stages in the world, she transformed poverty into pride, heartbreak into song, and grief into a legacy of love. She has endured losses that would have silenced most, but instead, she turned them into music that healed millions. Her life is a love letter to her family, her mountains, her faith, and the husband who stood by her for nearly 60 years. She gave the world pieces of herself in every melody, every word, every act of generosity. And though one day her voice may only live in recordings, the echoes of her compassion will continue to ripple through generations. The question that remains is not whether Dolly will be remembered. It's how her legacy will live on. In every child opening a book, in every fan singing one of her songs, in every act of kindness inspired by her example, Dolly Parton will remain. Not just as a star, but as a force of love and resilience the world will never forget.